investigation by the intelligence agencies into Ibrahim Bouissir. It's certainly extensive and in parts highly detailed, with reports of contacts with known jihadis all over Europe and elsewhere. But for all that, it's also highly circumstantial and doesn't cite hard evidence of specific illegal activity by him. And it contains nothing that would stand up in court, and nothing that would be likely to convince Irish Muslims who've ever come across Bouissir.
I don't know of any criminal activities whatsoever to the guy. I doubt if there is anything wrong with this individual, but if there is, and if the Americans have any, allegations, bring out the evidence. Let's bring people to court and take the right action against them. But it's just propaganda. Americans are great at propaganda.
Dan Coleman was for many years an FBI agent who was at the forefront of the US investigations into Osama bin Laden. Up until 2 years ago, he ran the FBI's so-called Bin Laden unit out of their office in Manhattan.
From this spot on the turnpike, you used to be able to see the World Trade Center. You went up on a bit of a rise, and you could see the Trade Center from 30 miles from the city. It was a rather impressive building.
Bin Laden first surfaced on the world stage in 1998 as the man responsible for the bombings of the US embassies in Tanzania and Kenya, which claimed 224 lives. Through the investigation into those bombings, Coleman became convinced that Mercy International, an Islamic charity with offices in Kenya and Dublin, was part of a network of Al-Qaeda front organisations.
The connection to Ireland goes back to 94, 95 through telephone records, toll records, recovered through the assistance of the Kenyan National Police from the offices of the Mercy International phones and the phones at the home of Wadi al-Hajj.
Wadi al-Hajj was Osama bin Laden's private secretary. US authorities decided there was sufficient evidence of contact between al-Hajj and Mercy International to regard the Irish registered charity with deep suspicion.
They're used basically as a cover. They didn't resurface again until the bombings in Africa of the embassy in Nairobi and Dar es Salaam, when their offices were searched and their records were brought back to the United States.
At the embassy bombings trial 2 years later, prosecutors said that Mercy International smuggled weapons into Kenya and that false documents belonging to al-Hajj also turned up at their office. US investigators also decided that Ibrahim Bouissir's Islamic Relief Agency was effectively the same organisation as Mercy International. And so Bouissir, or Budweiser as he was known to the officers, was caught in their investigative net.
He would be one of the people that would appear on the schematic, not as a secondary contact, but as a primary contact. al-Hajj's phone, Budweiser's phone.
But again, the intelligence agencies have not produced any evidence or public records establishing Bouissir's role in Mercy International. However, since 9/11, the Americans claimed to have more intelligence on Bouissir and the alleged al-Qaeda network in Ireland. After the attack on the Twin Towers, John Brennan was appointed overall intelligence czar in America in the War on Terror. Brennan takes the theories about the Irish connection to al-Qaeda extraordinarily seriously, and even claims that the former leader of al-Qaeda in Iraq, Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, had plans to establish a presence here.
Ireland has a growing Muslim community. Most of them are law-abiding citizens and very good Muslims, but there are some individuals there that have the same goals as the now-deceased Zarqawi and the still-alive bin Laden.
Again, John Brennan's attention was focused on Ibrahim Bouissir, but again, the evidence is all highly circumstantial.
If you were to look at Mr. Bouissir's past, you would see that there would be quite a few connections between Mr. Bouissir and individuals throughout Europe, in the UK, in Spain, in Italy, in Germany, and other places. There's a fairly extensive network of contacts.
That network, as outlined in the intelligence file on Bouissir, cites a variety of different contacts and associations with al-Qaeda suspects stretching back 8 years. It alleges that his photograph turned up in a jihadi safe house in Afghanistan alongside a photograph of Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, that he's connected through phone calls to a senior British al-Qaeda figure called Khalid al-Fawaz, that he attended training camps in Afghanistan, and that he has met Osama bin Laden. The Americans claim that he has met Osama bin Laden.
Do they? Well, in my understanding, no. Had there been any cutting proof, like the proofs you're talking about, we wouldn't see him here today. If you look at the people in Guantanamo Bay, the many people over there, they have been released because it was later on discovered that they were innocent. Then what about a person who is proved to be guilty? Well, that will we just then let him go?
Gardaí were first told about the US attitude to Ibrahim Bouissir in 1999, when another member of the FBI's Bin Laden unit visited Dublin.
Frankly speaking, when we first approached the Garda, I think it's fair to say that we got a little bit of pushback. You know, what is this all about? Are we, the Americans, running around with our hair on fire, telling everybody that you've got a potential problem here?
The Gardaí, however, now take what the Americans say about Ibrahim Bouissir very seriously. We understand that Bouissir's phones are bugged and that he's routinely followed by the Garda Special Branch. Garda sources have alleged to us that Bouissir has raised funds, provided safe houses and acted as a facilitator for the jihadi cause. But in Ireland, it's not just the Gardaí who have an interest in Bouissir. Army intelligence also monitor his movements, and Primetime has seen their latest briefing on him, which was sent to the Government Task Force on Emergency Planning. It alleges that Bouissir is affiliated with al-Qaeda and that he is a transnational Sunni Islamic extremist who actively brokers relationships with varied groups in many countries. He remains deeply involved in the movements of persons into this jurisdiction. In spite of the relentless Garda interest in Ibrahim Bouissir, he's never been convicted of any jihadi-related offences. He's been arrested and questioned here at Kevin Street Garda Station for 3 days, but he was released without charge. The Gardaí have also carried out a 2-year investigation into the finances of his charity. 15 bank accounts were identified, but nothing illegal was found. And sources say the US has now renewed its interest and has asked the Irish government for information about Bouissir's bank records as part of a new inquiry. And in the face of all this, without any proof being produced, Bouissir still remains a special designated global terrorist over in America. Can you see how many people would view this with a certain degree of cynicism and suspicion? That the information isn't correct?
What I can say is, well, a few things. One, we take exceptional care before we take action to designate somebody. Two, the evidentiary standard that we need to meet in order to take administrative action, and in the United States, as it is in most places around the world, a designation and asset freezing is an administrative action, is quite a different standard from that required for criminal action, in which you have the highest evidentiary bar to clear.
But again, the claim that the US would not lightly smear an individual in this way cuts little ice with many Irish Muslims.
They have generated wrong reports. They've falsified information to allow the war to go on. And right through the war, they were like lying right through their teeth. So they're not to be trusted at face value.
Even as a man branded a specially designated global terrorist, Ibrahim Bouissir remains a popular figure in the Muslim community here. He declined to be interviewed for this programme, although we did approach our camera to introduce himself as we were filming one day in Clonskeagh Mosque.
I'll say a few prayers for you, so you join us and you have a prayer, then you do the prayer. And we will be in church for all the Muslim documentary. Okay. See you, nice to meet you. Assalamu alaikum. They will look after us.
It was here in Clonskeagh, coincidentally, that an alleged associate of Bouissir called Abu Hafs al-Libi also came to pray until he went to Iraq to join the insurgency under the leadership of Abu Musab al-Zarqawi.
The news came that one of the al-Qaeda leader, second to al-Zarqawi, was al-Libi, Abu Hafs al-Libi. he was in Iraq. And I didn't believe it before my children told me that they used to see